things. You mentioned in passing the prime energy thing on the ring. I do want to talk about that. But before we get there, I saw over the weekend, Cody Rhodes posted on his Instagram, he's got a new wrap on his bus. Now, that in and of itself is not a big deal. Hey, man, you don't want to be low key. You want to let everybody know the American Nightmare is coming in. That's cool. I get it. What's even more interesting is that the wrap is for a vodka brand. Wheatley Vodka is now the official sponsor of WrestleMania 40, the official vodka of WrestleMania 40. And they've even wrapped Cody Rhodes' bus. How about that? Wheatley
That's really
vodka.
interesting.
Like, listen, I, for one, am all for it. I felt like this was a lost opportunity a long time ago. We've heard the stories for years that WWE really wanted a beer sponsor. And I think once upon a time, there were some hurt feelings over there being a Miller Lite commercial and a Coors Light commercial that were wrestling themed, and WWE wasn't as involved. And I know in like 89, Jim Herd got Coors Light associated with WCW, and that was cool, but it never really happened again. I was shocked that there is a vodka sponsor of WWE, but in a good way. How about you?
Same. And for years, one of the reasons, and I too, when in WCW, we were doing everything we could to get a beer sponsor. And we get close because, especially in the 90s, late 90s, we were delivering massive numbers. We were kind of up there in the pop culture zeitgeist, so to speak. One of the reasons I wanted to have a presence at Sturgis was to help attract not only automotive sponsors, gas and oil as they refer to it in the ad space, but I was also hoping that we would be able to crack that beer sponsorship. Couldn't get it done. And one of the reasons we couldn't get it done is because, or at least this was the reasons we were told, by the ad agencies and media buyers, was that because even though WCW was primarily an 18 to 49-year-old demo, that was our target, that's what we were working towards, there was still such a significant teen and preteen composition of our audience that beer companies just felt like it was inappropriate. Even though we were targeting 18 to 49 and our show was rated accordingly, the fact that we had such a significant segment of our audience that was below drinking age scared off the beer companies. So to see all of a sudden, people embracing WWE, which I think probably has an even younger demo than WCW did at the time, I think it's pretty interesting. Things are changing so much. I mean, look at some of the, okay, we got a vodka sponsor. And by the way, cool bus, Cody, cool bus. I never had a bus at all. I had a motorhome once at Sturgis. That was it.
You had an airplane.
Well, yeah, but I bought it myself. Nobody bought it for me. Nobody was paying for it. I had to buy it. But not only are we seeing now vodka sponsoring WrestleMania, look at some of the language that Rock is using in his promos on Instagram, for example. We're leaning into, fuck your dream, Cody Rhodes. It's like, whoa. So maybe there's a move afoot to kind of abandon the teen and preteen safeguards that have been in play for so long.
It's so exciting to think about. And I got to tell you, the thing that really, as silly as this is, the thing that proved once and for all, boy, Vince McMahon is gone and he ain't ever coming back. Logan Paul on SmackDown introduced a prime bottle in the center of the ring. For years and years, the canvas has been off limits for advertisers. Yes, if you want your name on the ring skirts, we can do that. If you want them on those barricades around the ring, we can do that. If you need some signage as we come in and out of the break and you want a live read from the announcer and Michael Cole tell you about how you can bundle and save, we can do that. But never have they ever allowed anything to be on the ring canvas. And you were doing this way back when in WCW, and it sort of went away. But now here it is again. And we have seen this in AEW in the past with like DraftKings and maybe State Farm. I know over the weekend, Rampage had it for Woo Energy, which I was shocked to see. But Prime, I mean, this was announced as being the biggest sponsorship in WWE history. And it apparently is not only going to be there at WrestleMania, but all major premium live events going forward. Man, if we're not talking about one Paul brother, we're talking about another. What do you make of this, dude?
I wish I knew the dollar amount.
It's got to be
I
nuts.
haven't heard anything yet. I don't know if you have.
No, I haven't. I can ask though.
I'd be really curious what that sponsorship looks like. I mean, did he get a friends and family discount? Perhaps because they wanted to
Rep him and other
so to
stuff.
speak, break the ice and attract other potential in-ring sponsors. Pretty amazing. But you're right. I mean, it's if anything is kind of in your face and reminding us that Vince is really gone and really doesn't have any influence, I think it's the fact that a brand other than WWE is getting such a prominent placement inside of WWE programming. Because that's one of the things that Vince was always focused on, was, and justifiably so. I mean, it proved to be correct. But the brand, it was WWE above all else. Not so much anymore.
Do you think this becomes a new trend in other areas of wrestling? I mean, we've seen, we saw like Master Lock, I think, did like a pay-per-view for y'all in WCW in 2000. Maybe it was Bash at the Beach, but I know there were sponsorship opportunities in WCW, and we know that AEW has done some of this. I've certainly seen it in MLW.
Well, look at Slim Jim. I mean, there are still. I was in a where was I? I was in Detroit a couple of weeks ago. Went into a convenience store, and there's a giant Randy Savage Slim Jim point of purchase display still there. And I think Slim Jim is probably the sponsor, in ring and otherwise, that we've become so familiar with. But I think we're going to see more of it. I don't know if we're going to see it in Impact or TNA or whatever it's called, or how much more we'll see of it in AEW, because it's, they don't really have a significant enough audience to make any kind of a really big deal work. But it could see it in the future, assuming Impact is still around and at some point AEW starts to grow. You could see it. I hope you see it.
I'm just blown away that it's happening. I will say it's a great deal for Prime. I mean, think about how many times you and I have gone back or through all of our little podcast network here, and we fired up nostalgia footage on Peacock. And the idea that as we're watching these old matches, you're going to cut out the commercials, but those matches and the things that happen in the confines of the ring, that'll live on forever and ever. And it's one thing if it is just a random television show. Yes, a lot of people will see it that first time on television, but if nothing of major consequence happens on that show, by and large, that show's forgotten about outside of the people who were in the building that night. But man, know that if we were to fire up SummerSlam 88 and there was a Coca-Cola logo on the ring, and they're still getting value for that in 2024. Good call by the Prime business folks who were helping Logan in these sort of deals. No,
great move. Do you ever see? I haven't seen Prime on the shelves. Have you seen it?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Okay. And granted, I don't go looking for energy drinks, but I'll look for it. But I wonder how long has that brand been around? Is it like within the last year or two, or has it been around?
Yeah, he just launched it a couple of years ago. They did over $1 billion in sales last year. But when they were first getting rolling, over $1 billion right away. But when they were first getting rolling, the kids, because that's who this is targeting, kids were selling empty Prime bottles and refilling it to look cool at school. They did a whole episode on this on South Park where they just spoofed Prime. They didn't call it Prime. I don't think they called it something else. But my goodness, it took over youth, and that's the reason it blew up. And the reason you haven't seen it is because you haven't looked for it. It's because it's targeted for kids. I just think that's fascinating. That I know that we're going to say, no, they're not targeting kids, but that's who Logan Paul and KSI are brand influencers for, is young people.
I mean, that's a perfect illustration of, I mean, what a juxtaposition, right? You've got Prime in the center of the ring.
And a vodka.
And it's targeting kids.
Yes.
unapologetically and
Yes.
successfully targeting his, but over here we've got vodka. It's things are
Then,
changing
now,
so
together
much.
forever.
And maybe it's, and I said this, I think I said it to you last week, or maybe it was to Alba over on Strictly Business. Perhaps, advertising is changing as well because of the it's become so much more difficult to reach your target audience. This has been going on for a long time, really since the internet. There was back when the internet and social media first started really evolving. There was a lot of conversation about advertisers taking some of their traditional media buying budget, traditional meaning television, radio, and print, and now taking a part of that budget and moving it over towards internet marketing. Well, fast forward several years, a decade or so, now you've got streaming platforms. So as an advertiser, you've got much more complicated decisions to make and opportunities in front of you. You still have essentially the same amount of money theoretically in your advertising budget, but now instead of going, okay, it's radio, television, print, maybe some billboards, and we'll sponsor a golf tournament. Now you've got streaming platforms and internet and Facebook and Twitter, and it's a much more complicated environment to reach there's more opportunities, granted, but they're complicated. And perhaps now we're seeing advertisers, kind of dropping some of the prerequisites that they used to have. For example, with vodka, perhaps they don't worry quite so much anymore whether there's a significant part of the audience that's teen or preteen. Whereas that mattered a great deal 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. Perhaps now, because advertising has become so much more complicated and challenging, maybe now it doesn't matter anymore. And we'll start seeing beer sponsors and people that typically wouldn't advertise in wrestling do so because shit's changing.